Hi and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to go over a traditional artisan sourdough loaf using cup measurements. It occurred to me that not everybody has a scale, and I actually started learning using this method and not using a scale. I think either way is honestly fine, and if you're having trouble with one, try the other, see if it works for you. If you don't have a scale, use this way. I actually teach a sourdough class. Well, my sister-in-law teaches a sourdough class in our area, and I have started to teach with her recently as well, and so I might as well have a video on how to make it this way. So if you're interested in that, I also thought this video would be nice to show like how I do it since I'm busy and I work a full-time job. So right now, I actually have dinner started on the stove right here, and I'm gonna put this dough together while that's cooking, and then I just do the rest of the steps kind of in between my natural evening routine. So it can work for you if you work full-time, but it just does kind of sometimes take a little bit of getting used to and getting it to a place that it works for you. So this morning I fed my starter. And this says 12 a.m. This is actually an old marking. I fed it at like 11:30 in the morning this morning, and it's now 6, and it has more than doubled and is ready for us to use. So we're gonna start with the water, and then you're gonna add the starter to that and also the honey. The exact measurements for this will be in the recipe that is linked in the description below. And then just mix that all together until it looks milky. Then after that, you'll add your flour and your salt. There are a lot of methods out there that say you should add your salt separately. I've never had a problem. I've tried it both ways, and adding it at the same time as the flour works just fine for me, so it just saves me an extra step than adding it later. So at this time, you are not looking for a perfectly smooth dough. I do like to get my hands in there at this point because my dough hook just won't bring it together all the way. And even still, I'm not looking for the perfect smooth dough ball. I am just looking for a shaggy dough and all of the ingredients to have come together. Okay, so that took about 25 minutes to put together, and that was because I was cooking dinner at the same time. So like I said, this can fit within your schedule. Now comes the Autolyse period, which is just where you allow it to sit and you allow all that water to absorb all of the flour. And so that can be anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour. For me, it's gonna be how long it takes to eat dinner tonight. And then we'll come back and revisit it. So just make sure your dough is covered with something and let it do its thing. Okay, so now it's actually been over an hour, but that's fine, no big deal. The recipe that is going to be linked down below actually calls for this to be mixed on a stand mixer, but that's not a method that I use. I just do everything by hand because honestly, it's just easier for me. So I'm just gonna knead it. I think it says for 10 minutes on a stand mixer. I honestly just knead it a little bit with my hands until it is like slightly sticky, but it will come away from my hands. So if it's too sticky while I'm kneading, then I'll add some flour, and you'll see that, and I'll try to give you a good picture of what it looks like when I believe that it's done. So I don't necessarily have some great kneading technique. just working the dough, bringing it together and getting it to be a smoother ball. And then in a second, I'm going to show you how I know that it's kind of done. So it's not really, it's kind of holding its shape. And when I stick my hand to it, it's sticky, but not a ton of dough is coming away on my hand. And that's what I'm looking for. Okay, so now that's gonna rest for 30 minutes and we're gonna start the stretch and fold process. If you've seen my other bread videos, so that would be the traditional sourdough artisan loaf or the whole wheat sourdough with freshly milled grain, then you're kind of familiar with this process. Or maybe if you've watched any other sourdough video at all, they might have done this. Basically, a stretch and fold is where you just pull the dough up on one side and fold it over itself. So I do that 3 to 4 times every 30 minutes starting now. So this rests for 30 minutes. I'll come back and do my first stretch and fold. I'll show you that process. And then once all those stretch and folds are done, it just sits overnight. And then it will be ready for me to shape before I go to work tomorrow. So each set of stretch and folds looks the same for me. So I'm gonna pull the dough up on one side, fold it over to the other side, turn the bowl a quarter turn, and do the same thing. Then another quarter turn, pull it up and stretch it over. One final quarter turn, and you can see the dough is getting tighter each time. That's normal. Pull it up and fold it over. And you can see nothing looks perfect here. Just kind of making it into a ball. I'm gonna cover it, let it rest for 30 minutes, and repeat the process 2 or 3 more times. All right, I only did 3 tonight because I'm tired. I want to go to bed, and it was pretty tight, so it was fine. I did cover it with a beeswax wrap tonight because I don't want any air to get to it or the top will form sort of like a crust. It will dry out, and I don't really like that. It's not the end of the world, but I don't love it. So for the overnight rise, that's what I use to cover it. If you don't have that, then you can just use like some sort of cling wrap or plastic wrap, or even just a damp towel would be good, and that would keep it from drying out. So this is what I have, this is what I use. I will see you in the morning when we shape. I didn't realize that my footage of the shaping was so cut off, so I'm sorry about that, but I think you can get the gist of it still. I split my dough into 2, and then I just stretch it into a rectangle as best I can without ripping it. I fold 1/3 over and then the other 1/3 over, roll it up like you're seeing, and then tuck it into a ball. What you want to do here is create tension on the top. That's going to help your scoring and help your shaping. So I'm just using the counter to help me do that, and my hands pressing in and kind of tucking it in, and that's building the tension on the top. Then I'm going to put it on my parchment paper and put it into this basket right here. If you don't have a basket, that's fine. A bowl is perfectly sufficient. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the second loaf, but I'm not going to roll this loaf into a ball. So the process is the same so far. I'm stretching it out into a rectangle. Folding over 1/3 and then the next, and then rolling it up. And then I'm just pinching the sides together because I want this more of an oval shape. And then I'm just tucking without rolling it in a circular pattern. And then I'm going to do the same with parchment paper and put it in that basket. And again, if all you have is a bowl, that's perfectly fine. And what I'm doing here is getting them ready to go into the fridge. So I just use plastic grocery bags. I tie them as tight as I can. And then they're going to go into the fridge for, if I'm doing this at night, then it's overnight. If I'm doing this in the morning, then it's going in there while I'm at work. And I'm wrapping them in plastic because I want them to be protected from the air. And these bags are the best way that I have found to do that. Now we are jumping straight to scoring, and honestly, these loaves were actually in my fridge for, I think, 5 days. I was so tired, I just couldn't get to them. And so the fridge slowed down the process enough that they did not get too overproofed to still bake. So on this loaf, I'm starting with my shallow scores. Shallow scores are more decorative. And if you only want to do shallow scores, you can do that. You just need a lot of them over the entire surface of the loaf. I'm just gonna do these 3 little wheat stalks here, and then I'm gonna add the deep score that is gonna tell my dough where to rise. And with the deep score, I always go a little bit deeper than I think I actually need to. And I always really like the way that it turns out when I do that. So my Dutch oven has been preheating in the oven at 500 degrees. And now I take it out, it's very hot. Put my dough in there, cover it back up, cook it, bake it for 30 minutes. And then I'm gonna uncover it and finish baking it for 10 minutes. And this is the finished product. Now, this parchment paper that you're seeing is really inexpensive parchment paper from the drugstore down the street from me. And you're gonna see it really stuck to the bottom. I have never, ever had this happen to me. And the only thing I can guess is that it was just really cheap parchment paper. And I actually end up having to just cut off that bottom crust with each piece that I used, which you're gonna see too. But just know I have no idea why that happened. I'm still happy with the way that the loaf turned out. Just that part was unfortunate. With this loaf, again, tired seems to be a theme. I just decided that I had the energy just for 1 large score. So again, I'm going deeper than I think. My oven was preheating again, or my Dutch oven was preheating in the oven. And I put cornmeal in the bottom of the Dutch oven this time, and so this parchment paper didn't stick as bad, but it still did stick a little bit. And I really should have waited till it cooled off, but I was trying to do this while the loaf was still hot. You can see the dough's kind of pulling away onto the parchment paper. And you can see there's some spots that are missing, but that's okay. This one turned out much better than the other one. And you can see that I got a nice rise on these loaves, although I didn't really show the rise on the other one, but there was a nice rise even though they were in my fridge for multiple days, many days longer than I normally do. So I'm just cutting into it. I am cutting into it hot. Again, most recipes are going to tell you to wait. Sourdough is so forgiving, you guys. That's me peeling off the parchment paper off the bottom. I really love warm bread with butter, so I've gotten into the habit of not waiting till it cooled down just because it's so satisfying to eat it that way. here's a look at the crumb on that bread. It's nice and open, but it's not too open that I can't butter it. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, and thanks so much for watching.